Hi, I'm Rob Nankervis. Welcome to the official launch for my first business book, Propelling Performance. I'm grateful that you could join us. Imagine a world where we as business founders, owners and leaders have high-performing, growing and increasingly valuable businesses that fully engage the talents, skills and passions of the people who work with us and make a positive difference in the world whilst freeing up our personal time. That's a great aspiration. But the reality is the majority of businesses fail to scale meaningfully. About 84% of businesses in Australia are constrained to living their life under $5 million in turnover. About another 15% go between 5 and 50, and a microscopic 1% of businesses manage to crack the $50 million barrier. Further, engagement levels are still low in business. About 35% of people, according to Gallup, are fully engaged in the workplace, making meaningful contributions, feeling their passions and energies are engaged. About 52% are not engaged. They're there for the paycheck, they do their tasks and paint by numbers, but they're not really bringing their heart, their passion, their energy into your workplace. And then there's the 13% who are actively disengaged, what we'd often call the C players in business when we're working with clients. They're actively working against you and not for the interest of your business. Then what about us? As owners, leaders, we're not finding it easy either. 84% of us are working long hours. 10% of founders, owners, leaders are continuously overwhelmed and are only getting about 1.5 hours in each day where they're able to apply that to the most meaningful work that they need to do. They report they're getting about 4% of their meetings fully effective, and almost half of them are saying that they're playing a role in the lack of productivity of their own teams. So what's going on? I've seen all this from many facets over 35 years in my career. Starting my commercial life as an accountant gave me an insight into the cash side of business. I then moved into consulting, where it was much more about the processes, the systems, the projects that get things done. Later, as a partner and part owner of a leadership advisory business, it was much more about the recruitment, the people, the leadership aspects. And then much more recently, as a coach and advisor, it's been much more deeply around the strategic ideas, making the key decisions with business owners and leaders, and also ironing out the wrinkles in their belief system to get that part of it humming. Across my roles as an employee, director, owner and advisor, I was aware of the substantial economic and social outcomes that a healthy business ecosystem could deliver, but also frustrated by the dysfunction and lost opportunity that I saw all around me. So in my view, the mid-market firms, who are a large part of my client base, have a huge opportunity to make a positive difference. And my personal goal is to help 5,000 of them over the next decade. Propelling Performance, my first business book, is part of my strategy to do that. So I'd like to provide an overview of my thinking that accompanies this presentation. In my view, there are 3 spheres of energy that really encapsulate the things that leaders need to manage. Effectively, as a leader, you're a chief energy officer in my view, rather than a chief executive officer, which really only describes one part of the role. So we need to start thinking about our businesses less like a machine and much more like the living organism that they really are, with their own sense of spirit, their mind and their body. The first of these spheres of energy, in my view, is what we believe as a business. What's the purpose for which we strive? Why are we here doing this work together? What are the values and the attached behaviours by which we work? And what's that bigger vision, that real light on the hill that we're pursuing as a team? Together, these make up what I call the beliefs, the belief system, the belief energy in the business. Next, it comes down to what we conceive. This is really the mind of the business. How do we think about our strategy? What about the business model? How we put together those bricks in our business that help us demonstrate how the strategy will be executed. And then around that, the risk management. How do we consider the risks and how we'll manage those in our business and the choices we've made? Next is the achieve energy. This is where if you like, the body of the business gets active. What are the processes that we need to execute on the strategy that we've just decided and that business model, conscious of the risks that we've seen in the business? What's the structure that needs to be put in place to support those processes? And with the structure in place, what are the people and roles that need to be brought in to populate it, to deliver effectively on what you've decided? Once we've got those three spheres of energy in place, a critical piece that I think many miss is the enablers that join them together. These are the activation, aspiration and escalation pieces that I call the blades in my model. So in the first one, aspiration, what we're really capturing there is the aspirations of both ourselves and our customers. For us, it's our big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG. What number are we putting effectively to the vision that we decided in the belief system? What about our customers? What are the attributes by which they decide to use us? What are they really after from our business? And finally, what's the competencies that we uniquely bring? How are we differentiated? The next blade is about activation, a crucial piece usually missed between what we think of as our strategy and the execution pieces that we see in the achieve sphere. In that regard, setting up our accountabilities for delivering on strategic priorities. What about the key metrics and measurements that we need to put in place to actually tell that we are on track with what we said we'd do? And what about communication? How are we going to go about aligning everybody and being clear with what we've agreed to do as a business? And the final blade is about escalation. Firstly, about reflecting on performance. And in my clients' cases, we do that as a regimen every 90 days formally. What about celebration? A piece that's uniquely missing from many models is how we actually celebrate and re-energise our business through what we have achieved. Many of my clients, in fact, when we study their highlights, are surprised by what they've achieved in a given 90-day period. And finally, the reset. With the reflection and celebration done, what do we choose next to do in terms of setting ourselves up to roll around the model one more time? Finally, in the middle is that central and important spindle of leadership. And critical here is how we lead ourselves, how we lead our immediate team, and how more widely we lead the business. And in the book we cover more detail around what each of those important leadership roles is. And yes, all that sounds good, but there are problems obviously, aren't there? And part of this is what we call the pain of partial propulsion. What I see is that there's some businesses have got pieces of the model in place, but not all. And this is why the stall that I referred to on the cover of the book happens. We get those, we got the dreamers, the doers and the drifters, I call them, who have incomplete models. The dreamers might have their belief system in place and the strategy, but lack the key delivery methods under the achieve sphere to actually get things operationalised successfully. Meanwhile, the doers are strong on strategy and getting things done, but they don't have a central belief system to which they can tie their team. And finally, the drifters, probably founded strongly on a set of beliefs and jumped straight into activation so that they could get things done, but they lacked the strategic direction to actually point the whole show in the right direction to get maximum impact. So, why the issues then? I think it starts, there's probably two reasons. It starts because we're evolving in an anti-clockwise direction, often starting, as I just said in the last piece, with a set of beliefs, and we roll that forward into how we operationalise our business, and then as a bit of an afterthought, we try and drive some strategy through it. The game actually, though, works like this, in my view. We start with a central set of beliefs. We articulate in the way I described the model at the start, through the aspirations, through conceive, through what we activate, how we then apply the achieve energy, and then the escalation to roll back to what we believe to reinforce it. That's how it works in the best settings that I've seen. So that's issue number one, is we're playing the game backwards when we need to play it forwards. And the second part is that I think a lot of the enabling blades are missing in business. And so I cover those in some depth in the book. So, as owners, founders, leaders, what must we do? Firstly, let's be clear about our destination. What do we really want for our business? What is that light on the hill? What does great look like? Then, have an honest conversation. What's it like right now? Then, a great piece I learnt in my coach training many years ago is that our performance as an organisation or an individual is equal to our potential, less interference. So let's get really crisp about what the interferences are that stand between us, where we are now, and that big and impactful set of objectives that we could achieve. And remember too that the interferences might actually be hiding in the step before the symptoms that you notice. So if you're, for instance, if your strategic sphere of energy seems weak to you, it could well be that the aspiration piece is weak, as in we're not clear enough about our customers, our competencies, or our big, hairy, audacious goal, for example. And likewise through all the other steps of the model. And then there's a piece here, commit to the work. What I've noticed with the most successful businesses that I coach is that they create their own certainty through getting clarity, alignment, deciding the critical few priorities, assigning accountabilities to get them done, installing metrics to keep track of them, and having a cadence of review that maintains momentum. We have an opportunity here as founders, owners, leaders to create something truly great. We just need to work out what great means to us and what stands in the way. So in summary, there are 3 critical spheres of energy that require our attention as the Chief Energy Officer, plus 3 enabling blades that connect them, and that central spindle of leadership that's so crucial in controlling the performance, the rate of climb, and the smoothness of the ride for our business. So a question, what's your main challenge? Where's the energy dissipating in your business right now? Is there an enabler that needs attention? Or is it something about your leadership that you see in your business that needs some work? What will you do to shift the needle in your business, to have the impact that you know you can make? What's that one key action? That's where I'd like to leave it for today, in just summarising very briefly as an overview the key tenets of my book. The book is now available, having now been officially launched. It's on the major retail platforms of Amazon, Book Depository and Booktopia, or indeed you can buy it directly through my website, as we have here on the screen from robertnankervis.com/book. In closing, I'd like to say a few thank yous. The birth of a book has many parents, and in particular I'd like to thank my speaking and writing coach Andrew Griffiths, who's just been remarkable to have by my side through this process. The remarkable team of Michael Hanrahan and Anna Clement at Publish Central, who are great with managing first-time authors. Anne George has been by my side for many years as my content manager from Word and Web. Caroline Buffington and her team at Aurora Creative, who stand behind us on the marketing side. Marcus Rufinach from MR Video, who's always there for me when we need this sort of video and live stream work done. My remarkable set of clients, who many of whom have been with me for years. I can't thank you enough. And my family, who've supported me through a very lengthy process with much patience to get to authorship. So I thank you all, and thank you for being with me for this launch of my book. Now we'll just, for those of you who are able to stay, we'll have some Q&A. I'll just need to pause here and move across from this web broadcast to host the Q&A direct from my laptop. So if you stay tuned, we'll resume in a couple of moments. Again, thank you very much for being part of my book launch. So just want to take a couple of questions. So some of them are coming through now on the chat, which is fantastic. A question from Susie about how the model's adapting to COVID. Look, I think thanks, Susie. I think the timing is really interesting. The Propelling Performance model when you think about what's necessary now, we're going back a century. You know, people started with was all about the really what I call the achieve area. It was about maximising what came out of our people and our processes and so on. Then, you know, that was what, 120 years ago. You know, you think back to the days of Ford and so on. Nowadays, what we're looking at is really the last, well, probably in the 50s, the rise of strategy. So you start to think about moving into that conceive bubble. And it's really only been in this last small period of time that we've started to think much more about things like purpose and values and vision in business. And so I think the timeliness of this, from my point of view, Susie, is to bring all this together. How do we bring the spheres of energy that are so crucial, effectively the mind, the body, and the spirit of the business, and integrate them as a whole? And I think this is the moment where we can do that. So just scrolling back through just a couple of the questions here. Yeah, so Darren, accountability. Business owners struggling with it. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think there are a variety of reasons. A couple of the key ones are this. I think a lack of directional clarity is part of it. The associated priority setting doesn't happen, and therefore without the clarity of strategy and the priorities there, people are slow to want to grasp accountability. I think the other part of it is, and many of us would have experienced this, there's lack of role clarity for many people. So again, they're not willing to jump on and be accountable. And I actually reckon an interesting one, particularly for family-owned, founder-owned businesses, is what I call the family factor. If you're a family leader or owner, I sometimes think you appear like the parent in your business, and people work in it who are like the kids, and they wait for the dad or the mum who are running the business to tell them what to do. And so I've seen bits of this, and the founder owners tell me that they actually think it's true as well. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think that's another one of the challenges. The other part of it is I wonder at the lack of trust that's generated in many businesses. Patrick Lencioni has a great piece on this in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, where he talks about the criticality of building trust at the foundation, on top of which is an ability to have active debate and what he calls conflict, but not conflict in a punch-up sense. It's conflict for the productive benefit of the business. And out of that conflict comes a willingness to commit, and out of that commitment comes a willingness to take accountability. And from that level of accountability, we then get results. And so I think part of it, Darren, stems from the base of the pyramid. We're not generating enough trust within our businesses and amongst our team to have the necessary level of debate to drive accountability up through the business. So just scrolling down. Yes, Susie, a business with a strong, if the CEO is not spending time working on themselves personally, yeah. Look, this is it's a really interesting piece for leaders. What's the role they see themselves best playing in their own business? And I've had a couple of clients with great self-awareness and humility, who've been able to step away from being the boss and have been happy to take a different role in their business, because that's actually played to their strengths. It's allowed others to be brought into the business that can bring strengths that might not be present in the founder owner. They might have a real interest, say, in the product side and the engineering and all those sorts of things. Most of the people I coach, in fact, are functional experts in the thing that they do, and through being very good at that, they actually became they end up running successful businesses that do the thing. But making the thing and running a business that does the thing are two quite different roles. So that's how I see it. There's a real sense of how they develop through, and part of this is the coaching task, of course, is how they develop their own self-awareness around those things, and understand where they want to take the business and what role they want to play in that. Interestingly, for some, it actually is advantagegeous if they play a decreasingly key role, because should they wish to sell their business, they end up in a bit of a cleft stick sometimes, because they become an integral part of it and the acquirer won't let them go. So there's some good reasons for the owner, founder, leader deciding what their best role is in the business going forward. So just scrolling back up to a couple of questions. So I'm just scrolling down, guys. Quite a few coming through. So the greatest weakness, thanks, Katrina. The area of greatest weakness, to be honest, I think is the belief energy sphere. So, and ironically, that's the area of greatest advantage for businesses that get it right, because because so few do, and second, it's an opportunity for a business to be more unique and differentiated. So I think the areas where, and it plays to what I talked about a little earlier in my presentation about building things in reverse. Probably the things that people do best and most are around that area of achieve. In the three pieces within there, probably the second best done would be the strategy sphere, and probably the one that's most underdone is actually the believe sphere of energy. And so for people, particularly, if they're adopting the approach I suggest, which is to roll the game forwards instead of backwards, there's a real advantage in getting crisp about the values, and particularly the gap there is a lack of insight around the behaviours that actually support the values. I often see sets of values that look like somebody's Googled world's best values and said they'll probably do for our business. But unless they're really owned, unless they're authentic to the business and backed by the sort of behaviours that you actually see around your place, they're not going to be a strong source of your belief system. The second part of that is getting really crisp about the why of the business, under the which I talk about in the purpose section of the book. Why are we here? What are the awesome things we've done for our customer base? What's the impact we're having out in the world beyond ourselves? And how do we think about the bigger vision for our business as we roll it forward? So just scrolling down a little here on these questions. Thanks for sending those through. And thanks for all the love and support, folks. There's plenty of great messages coming through. Thank you indeed. And yes, the importance of accountability. Yes, we've gone through that. So Neil, when the business stalls, how do you have energy to propel the business forward again? And so I think the interesting thing here, Neil, is what caused the stall in the first place. And one of the reasons I like, and I'm actually developing an accompanying tool to go with the book that will effectively be a diagnostic to help people with determining where their weak points are. And it's going to be one of those Likert scores, out of 5, where are you really strong and where you're really weak. And so that will help people to find out where to put the energy in. Because one of my insights for this book was from my early days in my own leadership, where I thought, well, I've been given the authority to run this area, and I got lots of levers I could pull, but which one do I pull first, and what's going to have the greatest impact? And so part of my idea in writing this book was to say, well, how can we be a little bit more scientific for a whole lot of other leaders who mostly have come up off the tools like me, and having to work it out as they go. So how can we help them be a bit more architectural about how they approach this, understand how their decisions in this ecosystem work, and be able to make decisions with a bit more sense of authority. So just scrolling down through here. Yeah, so Caroline, thank you for failing fast. I think this is one of the things that I like people to actually do particularly in a disrupted world. We seem to have a lot less predictability, don't we? So what I find is clients who are introducing things like MVPs, one of my minimum viable product and doing that very quickly, and accepting the fact that there's going to be a bunch of things that don't work. And my experience of it's been that on the whole, we're a lot better at starting things than stopping them. And so there's a bit of a commitment once we've started things to really see them through. So I think part of it is how do we understand at the start what good looks like and what the fail points might be along the way. How do we know this thing's going off the rails and there are the corrective actions that we can take, or is this thing actually dead? The idea doesn't work, and we pack up our tools and apply the money and the time to our next best idea. And I think there has to be, and it goes back to what I said a little earlier in the Q&A about the ability to have productive debate and conflict within the business, to just call out when there's something that's not working, confront those brutal facts. It's about the business, it's not personal. And how do we come up with our best thinking and move the business forward? So, thoughts on, thanks, George. So, thoughts on authenticity. So, and this idea of maintaining consistency, it really is all about that. The best businesses that I've seen have been really honest about who they are and who they aren't, as leaders and as a business as a whole. And really, this is a role that comes down to the owner, the founder, the senior leaders to set the tone on those things. And the businesses where I've seen it done well have made that cascade over multiple levels, and they're all marching to the same rhythm. And the beauty of that is that people can really vote themselves in or out of that island when they're really clear about, is this journey for me? And so that really starts right back at the values. And I recommend to my clients that they're interviewing from a values basis from the very get-go. Like, let's test for 2 or 3 of those crucial behaviours at the screening interview. I don't care what skills people have got. If they don't fit in your culture, we need to pass and move on to the next individual that can help us. And so, this, your question about rapid change, it really plays into that. If you've got a team who are all supposed to be there, they're aligned with each other, they're there for the right reason. I think the belief system actually helps by giving people this central sense of who we are, what we believe, and why we're here together. And that allows you a lot of permissions in terms of, do we need to change our strategy? Do we need some different execution in our processes? Are our metrics right? You can just go right back to the belief system and say, are all the things we're doing still in line with what we fundamentally said we believe? It's a very strong foundation, and that's why I put it as the first section in the book. So escalation, Jeff, thank you. The escalation piece is the final blade that I talked about, and there's 3 pieces to this. I've really borrowed this idea from the world of competitive sport. The thing that struck me is that in business, a lot of it is a pretty regular day-to-day operational focus, and what we really like to what we notice in sports teams is at very regular intervals, they're actually breaking out and having huddles and reviewing how they're going, and they can do very quick course correction. And so we need to lean on that idea, and it goes back to some of the earlier conversation we've had about the level of agility business needs now. And so how do we make that? How do we bring that agility into our business? And pause and reflect how we've gone for the day, the week, the month, the quarter, and then the other important part then is to take the moment to also celebrate and say, here's the things we did well. And one of the things, frankly, that often surprises clients when we have their quarterly review with their senior leadership group, the first thing I do is run through all the highlights that they've had for the quarter, and they often surprise themselves with how many great things that they've achieved. And so it's great to capture those and actually have that if you like laundry list of things that have been done. Not only for them to, and I use it, to be honest, to help them energise their day. It's a great way for them to start their day strongly. But the other part of it is for them to cascade that back to their teams rather than hiding that in the boardroom. And so often the senior leaders will use that as the basis for town hall meetings and so on to share those messages with their wider teams. And so with a sense of the reflection of, what things have gone well and what things have gone poorly, celebrating those things that have gone well, what we do is we're actually creating more energy, aren't we? And so what that does, we're cutting off our mistakes through the reflection period. We're celebrating our wins. So we're sort of limiting the bad energy flow and maximising the strength of our celebration. And the other part of it is then having this period of reset. What are you doing each year or each quarter or each month to reset the sails? What's our next set of priorities? What are the metrics we're chasing this quarter, this year, this month, and how those things being cascaded? So just scrolling down, I think we've got to the end of the questions. If there's any other questions, then I'd happy to take them. Otherwise, yeah, great to be able to launch this with all of you today. I'm really grateful that you've joined in the live stream and stuck around for the Q&A with me. I really appreciated all the support. It's for those of you on this, and there are a number of you on this call who've written books. It's it's a strong journey to undertake, and it's a big self-development exercise. So I'm grateful to have got through it, and particularly grateful to many of the people who are supporting me on this call, and a number of my coaching colleagues from around the world who've joined us. And I'm fortunate in doing this work and writing this book that I indeed stand on the shoulders of giants. Feeling very grateful right now, I must say. So glad to have the book out in the world. So to all of you who've joined me, and thank you for the cheers. I think I will go and have one of those myself. I'm excited to join the Academy of Authors, and thank you once again, one and all, for your ongoing support and for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.